afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, May 12th regular board meeting of the Pitt County Department of Social Services Board. I hereby call the meeting to order. Susan, please note that Ms. Perkins-Williams isn't here, but we think she is en route. Okay. I'd like to have us observe a moment of silent prayer or silent meditation. Amen. Susan, at this time, we have no public comments?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Then I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda if no one has any revisions to make.
I so move, Madam Chairman.
And I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Also, at your place, you had the minutes of our previous meeting, and it was in your packet. Any motion to approve the minutes?
Aye.
I have something.
Okay.
If we could, I'm so sorry, that's my phone. I was noticing, I appreciate that we talked about the orientation sheet, checklist, whatever it is for the, that Jan Elliott was so kind to create for incoming people. It was called a cheat sheet, and I was just thinking, I was hoping maybe we could think of a better term for that than a cheat sheet, maybe something a little bit more professional like checklist or overview or something to that effect. I just, somehow just the cheat sheet thing just didn't really, maybe because I was a teacher, I don't know.
Right, that's understandable.
Checklist is a better term.
Yes.
Okay, so
Well, should that be in the minutes, or should that be a correction on
Well-
procedure that comes forth?
wait, now I think you can, if you want to move the approval of the minutes, Coral, with the change from cheat sheet to checklist,
All right.
Susan, you'll make that change?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second, if that's
Second.
Coral's
I
motion?
second it, yes.
Okay.
Second
So
motion.
Coral makes the motion with the change. Mr. James accepts the change and seconds the motion. So all those in favor of adopting the minutes with a checklist included, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next items on our list are the items for consent. These are of routine nature. The first item is the subsidized child care budget amendment for $75,000, which is additional funding from the state and requires no county funds. It's also the proclamation for Foster Care Month, and that proclamation is included in your agenda. We all need to remember our foster families, our caseworkers that work with foster children, and especially the children that we take care of in foster care. And then the last item is to award the in-home aid contract. Those contracts were opened at our last board meeting. We had 4 bids. Staff has done their due diligence. And inside your agenda, you have the recommendation for this, and I'm going to let Jan at least speak to who they are recommending so that you all will know for the future.
Okay, we are recommending, after all the consideration in meetings, the 2015-2016 contract for in-home aid services be awarded to Interim Healthcare. They have a strong presence in Greenville and eastern North Carolina for 27 years. Offices in the surrounding counties that they can pull from. 97% are certified nursing assistants. Everyone's bonded. The staff is available 24/7 in the Greenville office. And so we are recommending approval of a 1-year contract with Interim with an option to renew for up to 2 additional years upon agreement of the parties. And that contract would be at $13.50 per hour.
And that would allow us to serve 48 clients under our existing budget.
I have 2 or 3 questions. Number one is, who did you have last year?
Last year we had Addis, and they have withdrawn.
They had withdrawn.
They have withdrawn.
All right, and the recommendation for other places that has been high.
We went to Action Staffing, Health Pro, Bayeda, and Interim. Interim and Action Staffing had the same bid price. Bayeda was higher, and Health Pro was a little bit lower.
Right, so we didn't take the lowest
We
one,
did
is
not,
what
based
you
on,
said.
right,
Based on.
a variety of factors that we outlined.
Right.
Okay.
Have they got to be it for other counties, or it's just locally Pitt County?
It's only Pitt County at this point. I will defer to Gwen since she was part of the interview process team.
They do provide in-home services in other counties also. Two other county departments of social services. And we did call those counties, and they got excellent recommendations from those counties.
Okay.
You want us to approve those? I assume.
Yes, sir, I accept
Madam
the
Chairman,
motion.
I move that we approve the items that has been presented, the three, for
Under
consent.
And I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any more questions from the board?
I just had a curiosity. How many clients do we average?
We currently are serving 54, if I understand it.
Yeah.
So anyone else would be on like a waiting list?
We currently carry a waiting list now, right? And it totally is based on the dollars that are awarded to us to purchase, to provide these services with.
How many clients are on the waiting list?
Yeah.
And that's a question I'll have to ask
Paula.
Ms. Meekins. How many clients do we have on the waiting list right now?
Estimate.
Yeah, approximately.
25? 225.
My goodness.
Right.
So obviously, there's a
And
far
we
greater
only
need
serving
than we have
54.
funding to handle.
Why is-
This is the home and, this is, the Home and Community Care Block Grant, and it
Yes.
continues to be reduced each year, so.
Well, we have that many on the waiting list, we're only serving 50 some odd. How can we increase the number that we serve so there won't be so many on the waiting list?
Right now, the issue is looking at the number of hours that we provide to folks. It's also looking to see if there are any other ways that we can serve them that would assist them outside of using these pots of money. Typically, these are folks who do not qualify for the Medicaid in-home programs. So we are very limited in what we can offer. Again, the Home and Community Care Block Grant, the state has in fact reduced it in the current budget year, in mid-year. So about the only thing we can do is look at the number of hours we provide to each individual, and you've got to consider what they need in order to make it worthwhile for them. So there's a limit as to how much you can reduce it.
So what you're saying, we've got them there, but yet there's no hopes of them ever really being approved, so why do we have them on the list?
It's a requirement to keep a waiting list. If people have to put their name on the list, and as people, that 54 is not the same 54 people all year long. It's right now, we have 54 folks. And as people move into nursing home care, pass away, we add people. So
to
people
that,
do
okay.
come and go. It's not a stagnant number all year long.
Is this something that grants, did I understand you say that grants were helping to pay for this?
The Home and Community Care Block Grant, which is a federal pot of money, and the state monies are what fund this.
And is this something that if we get the added employee that you asked for within the budget, would be active to pursue something like this on that behalf as well? That person would do that?
This is legislative, a statewide legislative pot of money, so it would not be something that anyone could pursue, but we could certainly look at other funding streams that might do this kind of thing.
Is that it? Okay. So then all in motion of, or all in favor of approving the consent items, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have items for report and a presentation from Julia Petrasso, who is the attorney that handles our guardianships, and she's going to talk to us about the changing face of guardianship in Pitt County.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. If you'll indulge me, I'll briefly tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit generally about guardianships, and then I'll move on to how things are progressing. My name's Julia Petrasso. I am the supervising attorney for the Department of Social Services. I am originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Janice Gallagher gave me my first job here at the county in 2009. So I was very fortunate to train under Janice Gallagher and Lisa Overton at the time, our wonderful former assistant county attorney. I have been doing adult services work since that time. I've also done child welfare and child support work as well. Recently, since 2012, guardianships and adult protective services has become a major, major function of both what I do and certainly a time-consuming task of what social services provides in terms of services to our clients in the community. Generally, there are three types of guardianships. There's a guardian of the person, and a guardian of the person, if somebody is declared to be incompetent, will make medical and placement decisions on that person's behalf. There's also a guardianship of the estate. If they have financials or property that they own that needs to be managed, the guardian of the estate will do that. And a general guardian is a combination of the two. Currently, we serve for guardian of the person for 84 people. And I want to talk a little bit about what happened in 2012 and how that's impacted the Department of Social Services and our adult services team. In 2012, we became the only public agency to serve in the guardianship capacity. Prior to that, there were various other agencies which would help serve mental health, public health, and other public aging groups were participating in that service to the community. In 2012, due to conflicts of interest and changes in mental health, we became the only one. As a result of that, 1,700 people who had already been adjudicated incompetent and were being served by other entities became clients of the Department of Social Services. And if I could talk a little bit about what that demographic looked like, 56% of all wards statewide served by public guardians are between 18 and 59 years old. So we are serving a very, very young population now. Whereas historically, the Department of Social Services really served folks in the post-60 age, not dealing so much with mental health issues, but more so issues related to dementia. We are now serving a much, much younger population, and we are serving a population that has some fairly serious mental health issues. I provided some statistics for you on that front page, and I do have the 83-page handout that accompanies that. I'm happy to email that to everyone or provide that if anybody wants that. Otherwise, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to talk to you about a couple cases that we're dealing with specifically, just to give a face to some of these folks that we're serving. Of course, I've changed the names of these people to preserve their confidentiality. But I'm going to talk about the case of Missy. And Missy is a young woman in her 40s that was adjudicated incompetent. She has a mood and personality disorder, and she is currently refusing to undergo chemo treatment. Her behaviors can be very aggressive and very disturbing. When Missy does go to her appointments, she becomes very agitated in the offices. She disturbs medical staff, and she disturbs the other folks that are trying to receive chemo. She's demanding that somebody be with her at all times during her treatment. And even if somebody is with her, her behaviors can become so disruptive that she's very difficult to manage, and it's very, very challenging to get her the medical treatment that she needs while dealing with her personality disorder. We are her guardian, and clearly this presents a lot of issues for us. One of the issues it presents is that we don't have the resources to accommodate her needs. We don't have the social worker manpower to have somebody with her all the time and have somebody with her during these times to ensure that not only she's getting the treatment that she needs, but also that the other folks that need a quiet and peaceful environment during their chemo treatment are meeting their needs. The reality is that our social workers are not mental health professionals. They're not clinical social workers. And so because of the shift in demographics and dealing with folks with mood disorders and personality disorders, it does take a certain level of expertise, which at this time, the department is really struggling to meet those needs. Her behaviors compromise both her own ability to receive treatment and put those around her at risk. And she is somebody who is subject to periodic homelessness because of her behaviors. And I'm sort of using each of these individuals that we serve now as an image of a larger picture. Chronic homelessness and periodic homelessness for this age demographic, this under 50 population, because it's associated with personality disorders, schizoaffective disorder, and schizophrenia, it's very, very difficult to maintain them in housing. And she is a classic example of that. I'll talk about the case of Chase. Chase is a young man. He's in his 20s. He suffers from schizophrenia, and Chase does not have any family support. And after being placed at a local group home, he ran away last month. And he has not reached out to us. We don't know where Chase is. Of course, we filed a police report, and we are actively trying to find him. But Chase is just out there in the world, and we're his guardian. We're responsible for him legally. He's not receiving his medications, which are necessary for him to function appropriately. He could pose a risk to himself or others. He will likely lose his placement as a result of running away, or his bed may simply get filled. And if he loses that placement, it will be extremely challenging to find Chase a place to stay. Jennifer. Jennifer's a young woman in her 30s. She aged out of foster care. She was diagnosed with, at the time, what was called mild mental retardation, oppositional defiant disorder, and she had a global assessment functioning level of 45. By the time the Pitt County Department of Social Services adjudicated her incompetent, she had given birth to more than 5 children. All of the children had been removed by the Pitt County Department of Social Services. And at the time she was declared incompetent, we had an ongoing child welfare case against Jennifer. So, of course, what issues does this present to us? Well, number one, we cannot serve as both the guardian for respondent parent and have ongoing legal proceedings against them. We can't stand on their side and then stand on the other side, on the child welfare side, and try to remove that child. That's a clear conflict of interest. As of right now, I believe we have one ongoing case in which we are asking another county to serve either as, to take the child welfare case or to serve as guardian, because the reality is, because it's such a young population and because they are producing children, this is becoming an increasingly bigger problem where we're serving as both the guardian for mom, and yet we're saying, you know, you're neglecting your children, and we have child welfare concerns as well. So for Jennifer, the other county actually refused to serve. We couldn't find another county. Again, she's somebody with the oppositional defiant disorder. It's a challenge to serve as her guardian. And so we couldn't get another county to accept the case. So in this case, we had to pay a company to serve as her guardian because we couldn't both litigate against her in the child welfare case and stand in her shoes as her guardian. We have the case of Sarah, and Sarah's a young woman. She's in her 20s. She was adjudicated incompetent. We were appointed her guardian. She gave birth to a child, and Sarah did try to provide a loving home to that child. Because of challenges as children get older, Sarah's decided that she wants to relinquish her rights to that child. She also decided that she wants to have her tubes tied and she wants to move in with her boyfriend. I understand that they wish to get married. You know, she's a young woman. She wants what other young women want. But what issues does this pose to us? Sarah lacks capacity to consent to the relinquishment, whereas another parent could identify an adoptive family, and that could be a very positive thing. They could go to the clerk of court and they could finalize an adoption. Sarah doesn't have the right to relinquish her rights without a much larger legal proceeding. What's our role in that? You have to remember, we have to stand in her place. At this time, we can't say, well, let's look at what's best for the child. We're her guardian. We're Sarah's guardian. And that analysis also comes into getting her tubes tied. first of all, sterilization, it has to be medically necessary in order to get sterilized. But, you know, how does it come into play when somebody makes the decision that they want to get this done themselves? Do they have the ability to consent to that themselves? What role do we play in making sure medical procedures like that are or are not done? It's a very, very complicated area of law. And just in general, what are we going to do with Sarah 7, 8, 9 years down the road? You know, Sarah's going to want to get married. What if she changes her mind? She's going to want to have more children someday, perhaps. I think what the whole state is really struggling with, and the statistics that I got is from a School of Government study that was done, because we knew that this was going to be a major problem when we became the only public guardians to serve in 2012. But we really have to start shifting our mentality about guardianships. This isn't about, you know, an older population anymore. The 56% is young, is a very young population, and we have to talk about family planning. We have to talk about homelessness and chronic homelessness. We have to talk about our interactions with the criminal justice system. Right now, we have an 18-year-old who is sitting in a jail in South Carolina, and she's incompetent, and we're her guardian. So I wanted to present to the board what the statistics look like, what the trends look like, and also share some good news as well. We have been making some changes within the department, which include we've sort of created a division within guardianship that is strictly targeted for the younger population. It's 2 social workers and a supervisor, and their sole job is to focus on the under 50 population. We do have 52 cases of people under 50 years old, and we have 84 total. So our local guardianships do reflect the statewide trend. We are serving a younger population now. Also, there's a new statutory mandate. We are required to provide statements to the clerk each year, and we are required to produce to her what our attempts to restore people their guardianship and to move to limited guardianships. So there is a trend that we are supposed to be promoting autonomy of people and independence of people, and we're doing our very best to do that. We meet on a regular basis. We talk about what progress certain people have made. You know, are they able to work? Are they in work programs? Are they doing well? Are they able to gain those independent life skills? You know, are they able to catch the bus and understand which bus to get on and get themselves? If so, you know, should we be looking at another psychological evaluation? Can we move to a limited guardianship where they gain more rights? We also, we just had a training on between child welfare and adult protective services. The reality is, you know, back when I started, you know, child welfare was child welfare and adult protective services was adult protective services, and there was very little overlap. And now you just can't get away from it. We have social workers that are called on a adult services report. For example, we got a report, there was a young man who had Down syndrome, and he was being pretty severely neglected in his home. He was covered in bites and pretty negligent circumstances. The money was coming into the home, and clearly the money wasn't being spent on him. Well, when the adult services social worker went in, you know, turns out he has a little sister who was a child. And of course, if we have concerns for him, that concern is going to spill over to the child in the same circumstance, and vice versa. I mean, we are dealing with parents in the child welfare system who are incompetent, and we have to approach this in a holistic way, because the reality is we just can't live in a divided world anymore. In addition to cross-training between child welfare and adult protective services, we also created a protocol for kids that are aging out of foster care. We have a lot of kids in the foster care system who suffer from schizoaffective disorder and bipolar disorder. And so Margaret was instrumental in creating a policy to make sure that there's no gap, that these kids aren't just aging out. One of the young women that I mentioned, Jennifer, she aged out of foster care and later went on to have more than 5 children. And if we could have identified, and this was quite some time ago, but if we could have identified her needs or her abilities or lack thereof before she aged out, perhaps we could have caught it. And so we do have a system now where when a child turns 17, if they do have some disabilities which would impede their ability to function independently once they turn 18, we are looking to collaborate with the Adult Protective Services to make sure that a plan is in place for them at the very least. And so currently we have 84 guardianships total. I presented to the Board of Commissioners in March of last year, and back then we had 71. So we're just going to be getting more and more, is what it looks like. And I just would encourage any conversation and discussion about how we can get really prepared to deal with this population of young people and what we can do to talk about the fact that these folks have some pretty serious mental disorders which put them at very high risk. And so just wanted to leave you on that very positive note. And
I am totally flabbergasted. How many of these that you gave the case scenarios of were in the system, if any, other than Jennifer, prior to this?
Chase was also one of ours, who Chase also came out of foster care. The other ones did not come out of foster.
How do you find those? I mean, how is it brought to the department's attention, just like Child Protective Services?
Exactly. A report comes in. In Jennifer's case, actually, the judge made the report. I remember I was actually on the child welfare side of it at the time, and the judge said, "I want to make a report because I don't feel that this person is able to advocate for themselves or live independently."
Do you become responsible for placement for every one of my
Yes, ma'am.
goodness gracious sakes?
Yes.
Do you have 2 sets of guidelines, one for a private individual such as me? Because I was a guardian for over 30 years, so I'm very familiar with the courts. And the clerk, of course, is the boss.
Yes, sir.
And I know that, but then she has to go before the judge to be approved every so often in my case. So that's the reason I'm asking you, are there 2 guidelines, one for social services and one for individuals such as me?
I believe that we all have to follow, we all fall under the statute 35A 1101. We all have to do the status reports and things of that nature.
Well, that's what I thought, but you aren't doing the job I had to do. I was in complete charge because that person, from what I'm hearing from you, the Social Service Board, you have guardianship over these people, but you don't have control over them. We had to have control. In spending money, that money is like to me that went to social services. You could have, should have control over that. You don't?
Well, I suppose.
I spent everything.
If we are a general guardian or guardian of the estate from a financial perspective, yes, sir, then we're able to pay for their services. This presentation is mainly just about guardian of the person. It's about, even if we make the decision, you know, Chase, I'm going to place you here, Chase runs away. And so from a financial perspective, we do have, you know, access to their assets and things of that nature.
I
to
guess
pay their
that's
costs.
what I want to know. This person ran away. You've lost contact with them, and it's one of them for years, so to speak, that you don't know where they are. They're just running out that wide. But didn't you get paid money as being a guardian to this individual to care for them and to make sure that they are properly cared for?
For all of the people that I spoke about today, we are not their guardians of the estate.
Oh, you're not?
No, sir. No, sir. They have no assets. These people
So they have nothing except what you're supposed to have the asset. If you're that guy, somebody has to look about them.
Yes, sir. For these people, they're just getting Social Security. They're just getting SSI. And so there are no assets to manage. 100% of their money goes straight to their cost of
Well, I
care.
mean, you're probably a losing car. I don't see how you're gonna ever do it. I mean, really?
Right.
I'd like to know where they're coming from. I mean, are they immigrants or, I mean, from another county? Do they just show up? How
Well,
many are
sure.
local and how many are, I
Yes,
don't wanna
ma'am.
call them foreign, but
Yes, yes,
Non-
yes, ma'am, I understand. So because we do have Vidant Medical Center, we do get a lot of adult protective services reports from the behavioral health unit. As an alternative to guardianship, though, we do have what's called an adult protective services order. So if we get a call from the hospital and they say, look, I have this person, they're in a manic episode, they're not from your county, but they're not able to make a plan for themselves to be discharged, what can you do? I can go to court and I can get a 60-day order that's called Adult Protective Services Order. And it just says that the person's disabled and neglected and they're not able to make a plan for themselves. With that 60-day order, it gives me 60 days to make a safe discharge plan back to their home county. At which point it allows for their Department of Social Services, it gives them 60 days to get the ball rolling on a guardianship and to investigate, parents or siblings or children that may be more appropriate to serve. We are supposed to be last resort. The statute's very clear that next of kin, family, friends, neighbors, if they're able and willing to serve, they ought to be the priority. So we really ought to be serving only for.
well, who pays for the return? I mean, you got a 60-day control. Who pays for the travel back to the county, wherever it may be?
That's a great question. I am not sure about who pays for that. That may be something Miss Elliott or Miss Burns could answer.
I'm certain it's going to vary. If they're discharged by the hospital and they have medical transport, and if they're Medicaid, then Medicaid would pay. If they have financial resources or insurance, there would be something from that standpoint. Sometimes families can come and pick them up once they've stabilized and take them where they need to go. So there are varieties of ways that folks might discharge out back to their home county, who then ultimately might move into a guardianship situation. But most of them are probably going by medical transport, would be my guess, into a placement of some sort.
But most of these people should fall under mental health.
But there's no mental health.
But there's no mental health. That's one of our big problems.
Yes, sir.
And we knew that when the state, when they took mental health away from us.
Exactly, right.
Do
And
you
that's
ever-
why 1,700 people came into the care, custody, and control of the Department of Social Services in 2012.
And of course, I was on the mental health board back a long time ago. But that always, I was concerned about what was going to take place, who was going to be calling the shots. And there was big dollars coming into it, and there's still big dollars going into it, but who is getting it and who is using it for the welfare of these people who need it so much? I don't have, I think it's really out of our hands, I wish, but that's the way the ball bounces, I reckon, is.
Sometimes the
terrible.
relatives are just as bad off as the patient. That's why they like that.
Any other questions, Mary, Coral?
What, it's so sad, we've stated a problem, and now we need to be seeking the solution. What would the solution be? And you're saying this is an increasing population?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's projected to just only get worse?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that due to just the fall from self-control and discipline and addictions?
I think a lot of it is just that mental health shut down, and so the services that were being provided, the aggressive wraparound services for people with particularly schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder and bipolar disorder and personality disorder and borderline disorder, we are not equipped to deal with that. You know, we have 2 social workers that are working with the 52, 18 to 59-year-olds. And, you know, we have to make monthly visits with those people, monthly contacts. We have to make sure that their needs are being met. If they're living independently, make sure that, you know, we're taking them shopping for groceries, things of that nature. And it's a huge job in terms of what I hope to achieve down the line. If I'm lucky enough to still be here in you know, 3 or 4 years, it would be really wonderful if this is how it's going to remain. We have got to have some mental health positions here, both for children and for adults, and for our children that are aging into becoming adults. The director had asked us before, you know, if you could imagine something, anything, and change something about the Department of Social Services, what would you change? And for me, my answer is I would have a mental health division, period. Yeah. I think if you had a mental health division that could serve the moms and dads that are incompetent, that could help them achieve their goals. Just because somebody's incompetent, it doesn't necessarily mean they can't parent their children, but they do need a lot more support. And having the staff that could really, at the outset of a child welfare report, identify that a parent is limited and is in need of greater services, I think would be instrumental in achieving what we're here to do, which is keep families together and make sure that services are being provided in our community.
Go ahead. You were going.
Okay, you next. One thing I'm hearing is that the mental health, I know if it was shut down, why can't it be reopened? Why, you know, if you know, if we go back to the state government, we go back to, you know, whatever
not funny,
divisions
but I
that
would-
shut it down, why can't they be pursued and
Because the mental health reform changed the face of mental health statewide, and it's now in these big regional entities, and it's no longer, like, we had our own separate independent mental health department as a
That
part
was
of county
working.
government. Yes, ma'am.
That
I like
was
to think
working.
it
well,
was
is
working.
this something that can be pursued with the state commission? That we can go back and, you know, keep nagging until it happens? And if it's happening in Pitt County, is it happening in counties statewide? Then why can't we as a group pursue this and say, we tried it without the mental health, but we found out that that's not working. We need to reinstate this division. And what can we do to change legislation in order to get the services these people need and deserve? What can we do to make this happen?
Mr. James,
My-
Mr. James, can we let Scott, the county
Yeah,
manager?
because I just could answer, I know, right, go ahead, Scott.
Clarify that word shut down. Mental health wasn't really shut down.
It hasn't.
It was privatized to private providers.
That's it,
in
right
the
there.
state. You do have what they call LMEs or local management entities that are managing the services that the clients are receiving by the private providers. So
That's it.
mental health services are still being delivered.
They
just
give
they're
it
being- they're
millions
being
coming to
modeled
Pitt
in
County, but social services.
But they can't serve. That's
Right,
correct.
and
Yeah.
under
For example,
privatization,
yeah.
they're not allowed to be the guardian.
Right.
Yeah.
How many of those people are in jail? Because
Of our people,
we have some
Yeah.
mental health cases in jail.
well,
Question.
I know we have one in jail. And then I
I
don't.
just toured the jail and that,
Right.
There's
it came out.
The sheriff has a
probably a
significant.
significant number of people with mental issues are incarcerated over and above the 84 that Pitt County DSS is responsible for taking care of.
Right.
So we're paying them both out of both pots.
And so locally, we have East Carolina Behavioral Health. That is our,
Local management entity.
LME.
yes. And they are unable to serve as guardian because it would be a conflict for them. And so they are supposed to be providing us with some services.
Supposed to be.
Yes.
Are they? The question is.
She said supposed to be.
We could use a lot more services. We could use a lot more
The,
services.
the big problem is The manager is right. Mental health they've got millions of dollars, millions that are spent in Pitt County that is not there for social services. Now, the group homes that we have here in Pitt County, do you even know how many is in the group home? What counties are they from?
I
I
would
guarantee you don't know.
No, I don't know. So.
I know there are group homes in every community just about in Pitt County. And they are spending, my goodness, I mean, they are spending, there's no telling how much money they're spending. You are not, and you will not be until the political system changes, you're fighting a losing cause, whether you like it or not. And it disturbs me very much, and of course, county commissioners, and some of those things come up there, where you're gonna put this, and I have tried to find out, there's some group homes that I know in my area, where are they coming from? You can't find out.
That's different.
I went to James, the planning department, they won't tell me anything. And if I can't find out anything, what can social service do about it? And it is really a big problem, but we lost big bucks is where it's at. And you got certain doctors that are involved too. Well, I don't know what you're gonna,
Well, for me, if
you don't have the money in social
if
service.
we're not going to change things,
not
if we
gonna
can't, lobby an act of Congress to sort of
That's right. You're
relieve
not
us, then we have to deal with the reality of the fact that this is the population we're going to be dealing with, and we have to get very proactive about long-term planning. I mean, these kids are 18 years old, and we may be their guardian for the remainder of their life.
Julia, one question. Would it take legislation, I'll use that for the lack of a better word, in order to bring a mental health type of division under the auspices of DSS?
I would let Jan answer that one.
I can speak to that. There are several county departments of social services that have set up their own clinical units in their agencies to work with both the adult and the children. They bill Medicaid for that service.
Really?
Uh-huh. They are certified licensed providers within the mental health system, but they focus on the folks within the DSS system that need these services. The Directors Association and others in the state are having a lot of conversation about this, and believe that a lot of the work we do now is much more clinical focused than it used to be. So that is one issue. We as an agency, and this is part of why Julia is bringing this, are struggling with trying to figure out how to make a plan to work with this, because we're talking about some of these folks will be with us 60 or 70 years.
Yeah.
You know, if they're 18 years old and they live a normal lifespan today, they'll be with us at least 70 years, probably. So it's something that we've got to figure out how to grapple with. We've got to identify resources. We've got to develop our own internal resources. But there are, right now, a significant number of issues and potential liabilities out there. Counties talk about all the extra dollars they're having to put in to support the individuals that they serve as guardian for, because they need services, but they don't have enough resources to provide those services, so the county's having to pitch in to do some of that. The struggle with where they live, because these folks do disrupt. It's the same issues that the sheriff's department's dealing with, and the folks that are sitting in his jail. We just get them a little earlier, and sometimes they still wind up in the jail. So it's a huge community issue. There are a lot of folks working on it. We wanted to bring you up to date as to what this issue was, how serious it is for this department, that there is some potential liability out there, that we hope to be able to bring you some plan, and that we need y'all's support as we move forward with trying to figure out how to make this work. But it's a big issue. We've had, I think I said in the budget, something like 90% growth in our guardianship caseload in the last 5 years. So, and most of these are the younger population.
And Janice, as you work with the DSS Directors Association, if this becomes somewhat of a legislative goal for you all, I would encourage all of the directors to take it back to their counties to let it become a county's legislative goal as well, so that it's sort of hitting Raleigh from not only the practitioner as the DSS folks, but also the local elected body, who is having to figure out staffing and funding for this
Yes.
that you inherited.
Yeah. Well,
When-
exactly.
And you know, an unintended consequence that is growing rapidly of
Wow.
mental health
And well, the
privatization.
thing is, it doesn't need to wait. You know, we need to know how soon somebody can get some help. And nobody more than you wants, you know, calling the posse for reinforcements. We can talk about it all day long and go from meeting to meeting to meeting, but we need to, it's good to know what the problem is, but the better thing is to know the strategy to get the solution. And if we have to lobby for legislation, if this is what got us in that mess, then we need to correct that legislation to get us out of that mess.
And we are working with the LME. We have several things going on with them, initiatives that we're trying to move this forward, but it is going to be a slower process than you'd
Who
like
is
it
it that
to.
you said is working on that?
We internally have joined with our local mental health authority, the LME, to try and come up with some ideas and begin some conversation and dialogue about how we can better serve the population. They're working to provide services, but they're having to do it through all the private providers, and it's a very complicated process today. So,
It may mean that this group, the board, can send a request up, because we do pay for lobbyists. The state DSS board does have a lobbyer paid to lobby those issues of the legislature that we are concerned about. And so it may mean that we need to submit something in writing to go forward to address that issue. Because if we keep talking and no one raises it beyond the board meeting, then it's just waste of time. So I know that once it gets into the hand of the lobbyists, they really do what you're asking for.
And it would be wonderful if we could cut out the middleman, quite frankly, and stop having to beg and ask, you know, for-profit companies to provide us with services. I mean, that's what we're doing.
You see, that privatized, that's what always make me a little weary. They always promise a whole lot, but then they don't know what it is they're asking for, and some things fall through the cracks.
And they don't want to spend on you.
They sure don't.
And then it's an industry, and if we could cut out the middleman in a perfect magical world, that would be wonderful.
I'm just not sure how, that I understand this process. If a privatized company bids to have the contract, then you'd think they would be under certain commitment to follow through on the services they promised to provide. And that would mean that they would be held responsible. You could sue them for that.
So who's the oversight?
the LME is the oversight for all the private contractors. And they, work with you to determine which contractor is going to be providing your service based on the types of the different services that those contractors provide.
And LME stands for?
Local management entity. So in this case, it's ECBH, about to become Trillium. Trillium will be their new name, effective July 1.
And a lot of these companies essentially are like insurance companies. You submit your claim. I claim that I have a schizophrenic 19-year-old child, that he needs to be in a certain level placement. And they come back and they say, maybe they say yes. Maybe they say no. Maybe they say no, he doesn't need this level placement. We've reviewed the records, haven't met with him, but we've reviewed the records and we've decided that he needs this level placement. Well, when he goes to that level placement and he runs away, and something happens, we're his guardians. We're the ones that are responsible ultimately. Not only that, but now he can't go back to that placement because that placement's not going to accept him because he's a liability. And when word gets out to the other levels that are like that, and word always gets out, then they're not going to take him either. Now we have a homeless 19-year-old.
With issues.
That's right. Yes. And quite frankly, I've had this issue not only with our adults, but with our children, with our local entity. I had a child. Child was charged criminally. And we couldn't get a safe discharge plan because the child, because of their mental health issues, needed a certain level placement. We had tried lower levels. Those lower levels were unsuccessful and resulted in an assault and battery charge, which landed her in jail. We could not get her out of jail because she couldn't be released until we could send her somewhere appropriate. We couldn't send her somewhere appropriate because we couldn't get her approved. So.
You know who you're fighting, don't you? If
Yes.
you don't, I can tell you. These people are experts at it. The very ones that were running mental health back in when we were talking about it 20 years ago and 25 years ago are the ones now are in control. And if you don't think they know what they're doing, and what I would like to see us do is to go to be that middleman, to that social service come in with the big bucks as the middle person to take and to look out for these people. Because we knew that on the social service board, on the mental health board back then, we knew that they were gonna be left out. Because they were so expensive to care for. That's the reason they don't want that person, because that person's gonna be a big expense. And then they're not gonna make the profit that they would have made. It's just simple. That's just simple business. That's all it is.
Would we have to wait for another budget year to talk about making what we just talked about, mental health under clinicians here? Would we have to wait until?
We would have to identify positions and how we could do that, and it would probably require some county appropriation initially that we don't currently have, so I would say yes. But that doesn't mean we can't start the process and have a plan in place.
So are we talking about, like, what I'm hearing is maybe different legs to the plan? One being that you working with local entities, also that you would be coordinating with other county and with the directors and the state commission, as well as incorporating the lobbyists that we've got paid and who knows how to coordinate things with the state legislature. Is that what I'm hearing? That we have the beginnings of a plan here?
I think we as Pitt County DSS can't direct the activities of a lobbyist, but if the DSS Directors Association brings it up as an issue, then they have access to the lobbyist. I don't think it's something that's solved overnight. I don't think,
What's that board I go to on Friday?
because we would in essence become a provider, and to become a provider, and you have to have all grades of certifications and approvals. I think it's, at this point, it's raised the flag and we know that there's an issue. The commissioners know that there's an issue. And let Jan work through where it's going from the, because there's strength in numbers. And if every county's having this issue and carries it forward to the House and Senate, then maybe there's action. Just if Pitt County says, we don't know what to do because we've got all these cases, I think it's got to be a bigger than us effort. And Jan's got a summer conference coming up, I'm sure with the directors.
How often do the directors meet? Twice a year? Is that it, or?
They meet regionally once a quarter. And what I was gonna say is, there is an agenda item with the Directors Association that was part of their legislative agenda this year to add additional staff, to help fund additional service staff, for the guardianship caseloads, put more money into that. At this point, I'm not sure where that is in the budget, but that is something that has been on their agenda for this year.
If you write something to send up to that regional board, and they take it on as well, it's another, because they have the consortium.
Right.
So then that board too can endorse the issue
Right.
and take it forward. It's like a joint effort.
Right.
I don't know the name of the board right
Yeah,
now, but
the Board Members Association is part of the consortium, which is the Social Services Directors, the Board Members Association, and the Social Services Employees Association.
Yes.
And they have endorsed additional staffing and funding to support guardianship. It's a bigger issue than just an additional staff person, but they have at least started that discussion for this year's legislative session. And from what I understand, there is a little bit of money, don't know whether it will stay or not in the
Well, and
legislature.
if you get to a point where you need our voice, I mean, I think as a board, we encourage you to have some more conversations with the LME, have conversations with the consortium, as well as the Directors Association, as well as the county commissioners. Then the county commissioners can have that kind of conversation with the County Commissioners Association. And everybody knew that mental health privatization was gonna have some unintended consequences. Was it this one, and was it as fast as this one's popped up? I don't know that anybody ever expected that, but we've gotta get it out there, and you've gotta get it on the radar in order for somebody to act on it. So I think as our director, we want you to be doing those things, and then let us know when you need us to stand with you and behind you and beside you. And
When is the next directors' meeting?
The end of May,
Oh.
for our region, we'll be meeting at the end of May. So,
Okay.
and we meet Friday.
right. The Board Members Association meets on Friday.
This Friday? Oh. So you can take that up.
Well,
That's
Oh,
what-
there's your
I
there's
was
your
asking-
representative.
I was asking Jan to write up something
So
to take.
Mary can take it with
That's
her.
what I was
Right,
saying,
right.
and I think nobody caught it but Jan.
Yeah.
And I would deliver it on Friday.
Well, I think maybe we've got something, we're starting to roll already this soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Julie.
you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited.
next item on the
Friends in high
agenda
places.
is an item for discussion, and it is time for the board's appointment to this board, which happens to be Becky Starkey. Her term is up, but she is eligible for reappointment, so we are looking for a nomination for Becky's slot.
Well, we can nominate her.
Absolutely. I'm just not trying to tell you what to do, Mr. James,
No, I would like to nominate Becky Starkey.
I
to
second
serve
the
another
motion.
term.
A second.
And Coral seconds. All those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
You have your nomination. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the director's report.
Okay, and I will try to make this fast. We do have a health department meeting in here at 6 o'clock tonight, so we have to be done so they can get set up. They do this quarterly, I understand. In your packet, you received a variety of information. One is the information about our vacancy situation. We have cut this vacancy report down. We currently have 17 vacant positions. It sort of shows you where they are in the process. We have our NC Fast report. As of yesterday, we had 139 applications overdue, so that you can see that we have definitely reduced the applications overdue. You can see from the chart at the bottom kind of how things are going up and down. And you can also see that the total reviews due from August through April were 18,957, and we have completed, as of the end of the month, 16,853. We continue to move forward, and you have the Medicaid backlog information there also. The other thing we have in here this month in our report is the yearly performance measures. This is the third quarter. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. I think everybody can pretty much look at it. There are several things here that are no longer available to us from the state systems to plug in. They're no longer being captured, or their programs we're no longer doing. I have in your packet what our new performance reports will be, and I'll get to those in just a second. You can also see that there were a few places that for some reason the system I don't know whether it was operator error or systems, but the third quarter figures didn't get calculated in there. We still have fourth quarter to go, and we will run through this more closely at the end of the year. You have a copy of some information that was sent to Mr. Webb. I'm not going to belabor that. He had been wanting information about our foster care spending and our programs, who we were paying and how much we were paying out for foster care. You see my board report for this month. Basically what I was trying to do. The month of April was a month that I spent a lot of time on budget and a lot of time dealing with a variety of client issues.
I don't think you do much.
That month I did, and it doesn't look like, does it? On the back of that is the performance measures that we have put forward to the county for 2015, 2016, to replace the performance measures that you just looked at for the last year. And I can, again, I'm running through this quickly, and if you've got any questions, please yell. I also have included the financial report for the agency on the back of the performance measures. It's at the very back where you see what I was doing, and then on the back of that. Basically, our expenses and our revenues, we completed 75% of the year. We have spent 69% of the money, and our revenues are at 66.7%, and since we've not spent all our money, therefore our revenues would be less. You do not need the application for a board member, because we've already done that. And so that's pretty much the information that I had available. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is that the budget meeting with the county, I don't know if Ms. Perkins-Williams would like to speak on what transpired with the commissioners, or if you want me to do it.
You do it,
Okay, okay. Both the manager and, the manager made the recommendation that the Northwoods project, the general assistance, and 2 of the 6 positions that we requested be in the budget for this year. Those positions were the investigator position and one of the transportation positions. And at the presentation with the commissioners, we went through, however, all of our requests, and as I understand it, it seems like the commissioners have thus far not kicked those recommendations that the manager put in out. So we feel fortunate to have gotten those things.
No negatives.
Assuming that they remain.
So we have 2 out of how many positions?
6.
What were the 4 that were not?
We did not get the performance position. We did not get the social workers for adult protective services or adult guardianship. We did not get the second transportation position.
But we did get 1 for transportation.
Right. Again, assuming it remains. They're not through their process yet, but that's where we are at this point.
Okay.
What did we leave out, Mr. Manager?
You left out the fraud investigator, the human services evaluator, again, the transportation aid, and
So we got a little bit more.
The analyst position.
The analyst position was not included in the budget. The adult protective services, the adult guardianship, 1 transportation aid, not included in the budget. Included in the budget was 1 transportation aid and the fraud investigator, as I understood it at the last discussion.
And we are looking at the possibility of including, based upon board comment input, the human services evaluator. Potentially, that would come Monday.
Okay.
That, I know it was asked about.
As a 3rd position.
That would be wonderful. So that's my report. I'll entertain any questions. I ran through it quickly because I know we still have a lot to do, but most of it is right there in front of you.
Next on our agenda is we were going to go into closed session to discuss the director's evaluation. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move we go into close. We gotta have the reading, don't we?
Can you, but I just want to make sure everybody still knew that's what we were planning to do. Okay. Susan, can you read the statute, please?
North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 regarding closed sessions, subsection 6 regarding personnel, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer, employee, or prospective public officer or employee, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we go into closed session to discuss the director's evaluation.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Coral will second. All those in favor?
Doesn't the employees get a raise this year?
That's in the
something
budget
y'all are
as
still
well.
We're
talking
working
about.
on it.
So at this time, Jan, can we get you as well? And we will be as brief, keeping in mind that public health is coming up at 6 o'clock. We are now back in open session. There was no action taken in closed session, and therefore there is nothing to report out of closed session.
I move that we adjourn, Madam Chairman, if I'm in order.
Motion to adjourn has been perfectly seconded. All those in favor say aye, because it's done. Thank you.
Great.
See you in June.
Goodness.